literally 10 minutes before we had this interview, Brooke, I was in a singlet covered in soil. I was soiled of sorts. So don't be too hard on yourself. Don't give up. Keep going. Don't over question what you're doing, because you might be in a bad place today. Tomorrow, something amazing could happen. And I always get out of bed, even if we've had, I've got teenage kids. So it's challenging at the moment for someone like me with OCD and ADHD. But tomorrow's another day.
Welcome to Successful with ADHD. I'm Brooke Schnittman. Let's get started. Welcome back, Brock, to the Brooke and Brock Show. Just kidding. To Successful.
I actually love that. It's the only reason I agreed to do it, just so you say the Brooke and Brock Show.
Yes. For those of you who don't know, this is Successful with ADHD, and Brock and I have tried to do this about 5 or 6 times, including today. And every time something happens, there's a distraction. We get distracted and we just have so much to talk about. So hopefully we can be really clear and concise for you guys today so you can get the value of what Brock brings. Brock is very successful, but also humble. And he has exhibited his photography all around the world. He has a freckle exhibit, a beard exhibit, and get this, his stuff, along with others he's going to add, have been in space. So when we book our ticket to Mars, you'll see his exhibit out there as well. So welcome, Brock.
Good morning, Brooke. Lovely to see you and those marvelous teeth. Honestly.
Thank you. So believe it or not, Brock has ADHD and he has been very successful. So I want to hear about your journey. You have a very interesting one, and it still gets interesting every day. So tell me about what finally convinced you to get an ADHD diagnosis.
That is a very good question, Brooke. My youngest child, Olive, at 6 months old, we were literally connected at the hip from birth. Not literally, obviously. And I kind of knew that Olive had a similar personality, if you want to call it, character, as myself, even at 6 months. Elkie was very chilled. Fast forward to school, she was in year 2 and coming home from school, panic-stricken. So we sort of looked into getting Olive assessed. I then had an exhibition for CMN called How Do You See Me Now at the Oxo Wharf Gallery. And someone approached me who had a heavily autistic son called Sam to do a exhibition on the spectrum. So I got in touch with the National Autism Society, spent 2 months photographing a couple of people to learn about it. And then I was very fortunate to have a lunch with Professor Simon Baron-Cohen, who is Ali J. or Borat's older brother in real life. He's at Cambridge and he is like he's top of the tree. He is like God of the spectrum in the UK. Hopefully I haven't offended anybody by saying that. So I had a 3-hour Q&A with Simon and Charlotte, his sort of right-hand help. And by the end of this 3-hour lunch, I kind of was like, Olive and I are definitely on the spectrum somewhere. So we went down that journey. I'm timing this. That was actually quite brief.
For those of you, again, just going back, we can get off tangent. So we are going to be very strict here with our time and intentional. So
I've got a stopwatch.
Brock timed it. Okay, so you saw that Olive exhibited symptoms that were similar to yours, and that convinced you to get the diagnosis, which is very similar to many adults who get diagnosed with ADHD later in life.
I was 49. I was 49 when I was diagnosed.
Wow.
And whilst I'm quickly thinking about that, I'm currently doing an 8-week through the NHS, who are incredible. Like, big up to the NHS. I'm doing an 8-week group session with 9 of the people who were all diagnosed later in life. So we're like this ragtag. We're like the Expendables. You know, I would be Jason Statham because he's bald. You know, and on the face of it, you just wouldn't think we'd get on. But we're like this. We're like Earth, Wind and Fire. We're actually going to carry on the sessions post when it completes, but it's brilliant.
Yeah, so you all are very motivated.
Oh, it's amazing. I literally, it's like going to a masseur for your mind.
A mastermind, you mean? Master for your mind. So I think it's wonderful when someone first gets diagnosed with ADHD that they do get to some sort of support group, whether it be a mastermind or people who were diagnosed around the same time as you, or, you know, whatever similarities you want, just to gain that awareness of how your brain works before you decide, hey, this is the avenue that I want to go. Do I want to get coached? Do I want medication? Do I want to do this? Finding that support. So you found that with people just like you who have a late diagnosis. And now, because I'm sure you've shared intimate details about your past, your current life, you want to stay friends with them. And I think that's wonderful that you all have each other to support each other.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest, I was quite desperate. When I'm medication, I was diagnosed last spring, 2022. Olive was diagnosed a few months later. I was then, you know, it's quite a stringent test with the medication. I was then put on medication. It worked really well. And then we went to Australia at the end of the year to visit Sarah's parents. We were there for a while. So I had like a block of medication because obviously I'll lose it and can't find it, you know, classic ADHD. And I don't know if it was a bad batch, but early sort of February, March of this year, I was
spinning,
and, like really, really bad. And it's quite a convoluted process because it can put you into cardiac arrest. You can't just, you know, the GP won't just write you a prescription. So it's a laborious process, obviously, because for health reasons. And I would only say now that it's starting to plateau again.
So how did you then figure out how to calm the symptoms with medication after those 2 years of it spiraling?
I think because Olive is kind of going through the same journey as myself, which is good for both of us. And I'm actually getting Elkie, my nearly 14-year-old daughter, assessed for ADHD because I think
it's very genetic.
Yeah, I mean, I've given them all my good things, you know, all the good things from me. Luckily, they've got the mum's hair. But yeah, I mean, they're obviously aware of it, and I think the medication's very good. And when it kicks in, I'm like, you know, in hyperdrive. It's a bit like sort of Buck Rogers or something like that.
Hyper focus.
But I do find that when I come up on the medication, there's a window of about 10 or 15 minutes, about 90 minutes in, where I'm just irritable. You know, I'm like a bear with a sore head, as we would say.
Yeah.
And it's just, I can't, you know, it's mind-changing drug. So I can't, you know, I'm trying to be aware that I'm just being very cantankerous. So I'll just sort of go off and cry 10 minutes, then come back and I'm, you know, it's fab dad again.
So what made you decide now to go and be a part of a support group a year later?
I think because we moved house in December, which I think anyone with ADHD, you know, you sort of start packing and then you find something and then, you know, 4 hours later. So I was really I'd flew. Sarah was in New York on a shoot with some celebrity, and I had my 2 children. It was mid-late November in England, so you can imagine the weather was vile. I had a full house to pack, my studio, everything. And I was I had flu. I was really sick. And then we moved, did a bit of work to the house, changed all the locks, went to Australia, came back, had this batch of medication, then started filming this TV series, the BBC, which was, was really enjoyable, but pretty full on. And then when all that finished, the meds were just, by that point, not doing what they should. And it was so when this they said it's not therapy, this sort of group came up, I thought, give it a go. And it's been amazing.
And how did you find it? So for people who live in the UK, I know NHS isn't always easy to acquire. I know there's a very long wait list. So how did you find this group for people who are in your situation?
I do something with the 3 boroughs, which sounds like it's some sort of Martin Scorsese film, but it's not. It's just 3 areas that the council. We're in Lewisham, and the NHS have been, I've got to say, they've been excellent throughout. They've done things as quickly as they could with, pandemic, obviously. They just sent me an email. They said, look, Brock, we're doing this group. It's not therapy. We're going to basically explain. So every week it's, it's memory, it's, being impulsive or whatever. So we're sort of learning why we are the way we are. And I think one thing we've all realised is that we're all, if you put us up against the wall, like, the usual suspects, we all look like completely different. But when we all start talking, I presume it would be similar to being like a Vietnam vet or something like that have gone through something.
Wow, that's a very big statement to say.
Yeah. Because it's, I joked to you. I sent you that message on Instagram saying I'm going to ADHD A, and you were like, "What the hell's that?" And I said, "It's ADHD Anonymous." It's just me trying to make light of a very, very complex situation.
But how do you? And I completely agree, ADHD is complex, but you compare it to being in a group of Vietnam vets, so going through war. Tell me about what gave you that analogy.
And I love an analogy, Brooke. I just think that for my entire life, I have battled, I've done that wrong. I was a spirited child. Brock is easily, distracted in class. If Brock spent as much time in his studies as he does as entertaining the class, he could be, at MIT or whatever. It was just literally, I did okay at school. It wasn't that, but, I enjoy learning stuff, but school doesn't teach you about life. It doesn't teach you to be an adult, a parent, to be gay, how to save money, anything. It doesn't give you any skills other than you're going to
learn how to do math, learn how to do English, or don't. No, you're 100% about, like, I was a special education teacher and we did implement life skills to these kids because they had some of that on their individualized education program. But the general education students who didn't have special needs wouldn't get those life skills. And it was really sad because I didn't learn how to write a check until I was in my 20s, do laundry. I didn't know how to do that until I was in college.
See, I could do all that. Because I've got OCD as well, Brooke. I do all the housework. I do the garden. When I'm allowed to go shopping, this is classic ADHD. Because my wife, Sarah, is jumping on the wagon, the ADHD wagon, and trying to learn as much about why I'm so irritating after nearly 20 years of marriage. And one of the classic things that I do is I love doing the grocery shop. I've always done it. I like going, right? We like cooking, but I will go to get oat milk. But because I know that we're running out of cereal or yogurt, potato.
You'll get that too.
Nobody says potato. Yeah, so I'll come back with,
a lot more than you went for.
Not a full shot, but not what I went for.
Yep, same with my husband. You always have to have a cart.
Not always. Sometimes I just have 5 baskets. Because I forgot to take a £1 coin with me.
Yeah. No, seriously. For all the ADHDers listening out there, don't fool yourself. You cannot go into a grocery store and get 1 or 2 things. No. Grab the cart, because you are going to have a pile up above your head and you're going to be looking for a cart afterwards. So I constantly make that mistake myself too.
So I go to Sainsbury's to get oat milk, and Sarah calls me and says, "Don't go there for your dopamine fix." That was harsh.
Yeah, you can get such a dopamine fix by seeing all these shiny, bright new things. But I am curious so first of all, it sounds like Sarah is pretty supportive if she's learning about how your brain works, but you made a joke about how you're irritating. We all have our strengths and weaknesses. So is that really how you see yourself with a neurotypical wife?
Oh, the jury's still out for that. I think just I struggle being with myself, Brooke. The only time that I am at peace is when I'm grading images, photographing people, listening to music, exercising, or gardening. That's it. Or cooking, or doing the shopping. Everything else, I am constantly at battle with myself. So throw OCD into the mix, Brooke, and then you've got this, I'm not typical ADHD. I'm tidy. If there isn't form, and structure, I lose it.
So like the battle piece, the feeling like you guys have all just been through war, what is it like for you now that you have gone through a support group? Do you feel like that has lessened any of the feelings of irritation or feeling like you've gone through war? Where are you at right now?
I'll be perfectly honest. I'm quite glad that the episode we did was longer than War and Peace, but when that was meant to go out, I was dealing with my medication. So doing this group, it's literally, it's like I recharge my batteries. I go somewhere that I'm completely not judged. We're all different ages, there's trans, there's, non-binary, it's a real mixed bag of people, which I love. All different ages, but we all have this common thread, Brooke. And I think first week, everyone was, I'm very chatty, as you well know. A few people were guarded, but I think when everyone realised it was a safe place.
So you feel like you are with your people, you're not being judged, and then you're also creating this awareness with your people. Is that correct?
Yes. I just think that for the best part of it, half a century, I have battled with, am I doing the right thing? Society says I should do this. The media says I should do this. And people don't understand me. One thing that I've really learned from doing this, we've done 5 weeks now, is that we have had a lifetime of being told that what we're doing is incorrect because we're not conforming to what society says is right and wrong. We just do it in a slightly different way. So it's like driving to get the groceries, but we just take a different route. We still get to the same destination, but society frowns upon things because you're not fitting into the rat race, if you want to call it that. And everybody in that group has a skill. They're all interesting. I absolutely love the group to bits. It really is enjoyable. And we're like I say, we're like this ragtag bunch of misfits, but we're all the same.
Yeah. I love how you were saying we all get to the place and the destination that we need to. It's just not linear. We don't think linearly. We think in
Yeah.
different tangents, and that's okay. We get to the place that we need to get whenever we get there.
Yeah. I mean, one of my mantras is slow and steady wins a race, which I kind of learnt from my dad, who was definitely ADHD, but wasn't diagnosed.
You've done so many things that you should feel so proud of. You have not followed the rules. You have not followed what your teachers told you should be doing, or that you weren't enough. They might be ingrained in some of your thoughts and memories, but you have chose your own path.
Let me just dive in there. So I left school, and I left at 16 because I wanted to go to art college. The minute I was at art college, it was like everything made sense, and I was on 8 cylinders. I was just, cracking on. And you tried everything, and then second year specialised in whatever, and I did photography. And the head of course, a guy called Maurice Wood. So I went to school, then I went to art college for 2 years. 2 years, okay? And I tried everything. Graphics, fashion, photography, everything. But I was good at illustration. But my, flashbulb moment, I think, as we said before, was I wanted to be a photographer. But he felt, because then I went on to university, okay? So that was like a step before uni. He said, look, you've got the skills to do illustration, but my heart was like, I want to be a photographer. I was just getting all my dopamine,
Gotcha.
all of the buzz that I needed that my brain wasn't giving me as a 16 to 18-year-old, I was getting from photography. It was like a drug to me. So him saying, why have you applied to be go to do photography? You should be doing this. So I was then going to university. And that's
Gotcha.
where David Lloyd and Trudy Ballantyne, they sort of championed me. We just got on. I mean, I'm still really good friends with David.
Yeah, it's amazing how we ADHDers can really harness our abilities with just the littlest encouragement, because
that's something we never usually get. It's usually criticism.
Exactly. Dr. Hallowell talks about rejection sensitive dysphoria, right? I know that's a hot term, right? And we all know and experience it. But at the other end of the spectrum is the euphoria that we get from that positive reinforcement that allows us to just keep going and persisting.
Brooke, if someone says, I mean, I think that's probably why I struggle with any kind of compliment, because I was just always getting criticized because I hadn't done that right, or I hadn't driven to the supermarket the right way.
Right.
So, but when I went to university, David Lloyd, he just saw something.
He believed in you.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So for the people who are listening, what would you give like your number one success tip for you to get to where you are right now? I know you wouldn't call yourself successful, but I see you as successful, or full, Full, right?
I'm full of something, my wife would tell me, but we won't swear.
We won't go there. Yeah. So what would you say to people listening out there if they're going through their journey?
I mean, even now, I've really had a bad year because of lots of different things. I've got this BBC One show coming out next month, and I know that, the stars will align and everything will go back on track. But I'll be perfectly honest, there isn't a week goes by where I don't second guess myself. I don't think, just not, what's it called? What's the symptoms? You think you're just pretending. It's like I'm fake.
Impostor syndrome.
Yes, thank you. So not a week will go by at the age of 50 where I don't think I'm just pretending to do this. And then today I'm helping our neighbour Helen Wong who's lovely. It's got a massive back garden that's all overgrown, and I love gardening, so I'm doing that because it's mentally resetting the clock. So I'm spending 2 weeks doing that for her, and then the show comes out, and Brock's back. It's like Jack's back off Will and Grace. But I think people are always, with ADHD, we've got no self-confidence. Because of society, we don't do things the right way. So you're permanently like this in your head going, oh, I can't do that. I can't, yeah. And obviously organising things. And because we don't do things that way, doesn't mean we can't go in that direction and still end up at Kmart or wherever. I still second guess myself. I still doubt myself. But if you stop, my father used to say, quitters never win, winners never quit. And it's one of my things. You know, I worry. I look at other people's photography and go, God, they're so much better than me. And I have to.
At your level. Mm-hmm.
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, I permanently see stuff going. And that's another thing. Because, you know, ADHDs tend to have creative skills. And we've all got a skill. And that's one thing I mentioned before. If you think you don't have a skill set or you haven't accomplished anything yet, you just haven't found your skill set yet. But you will do. I was lucky that I found I was 14 when I realised it's what I wanted to do. But you will have a skill set. It's just finding it if you're feeling cloudy. But you can't give up. You just got to keep chipping away. I mean, that's what I would say.
And being so honest and vulnerable, like you might not cure the symptoms of ADHD, of the overthinking, of the comparison, but having that awareness, having other people that you can lean on now who are like you, I'm sure has catapulted your feeling of self-worth. And you sharing that everyone has a skill set is so true, right? We don't need to do what everyone else thinks that we should be doing, what our parents are doing, what, you know, our friends tell us we should do, or social media. Like you will figure it out, figure out your strengths.
I think that is one thing. I mean, I know that social media is very beneficial for what we do.
Yes.
But I think literally 10 minutes before we had this interview, Brooke, I was in a singlet covered in garden. And I walked in aching, thinking, oh, man. So, you know, just because I've got the Brock Elbank Foundation, you know, my merch on, half an hour ago, I was covered in soil. I was soiled of sorts. So don't be too hard on yourself. Don't give up. Keep going. Don't over-question what you're doing. Because you might be in a bad place today. Tomorrow, something amazing could happen. And I always get out of bed, even if we've had, you know, I've got teenage kids. So it's challenging at the moment for someone like me with OCD and ADHD. But tomorrow's another day. And if you wake up, I always get up optimistic. Never get out of bed and think, oh, you know, you might have financial worries. I mean, me and money we've never been bedfellows. So tomorrow's another day. Don't give up. You all have a skill set. You might just not have. And if you're in a job that you're literally doing just to pay the bills, but you want to do something else, you know, life is short. And, you know, if I drop dead tomorrow, I have done what I love for a job my entire life. So you might not have lots of money or whatever, but, you know, how many people can say they do what they love every day, apart from you, Brooke?
Yeah. So for people who want to reach out to you, Brock, where can they find you?
I'll be round at Helen's doing her garden for the next 2. On Instagram, I am Mr. Elbank. So it's MRELBANK. And it's mrelbank.com for the website. But I'm doing a GoFundMe to build a garden studio. Okay, and I'm going to build it myself. I've spoken to the company Modular Sips. I've got this thing, but I need to do that.
Thank you, Brock, again for being here today. Thanks for listening to this episode of Successful with ADHD. I hope it helped you on your journey. And if you need any additional support for you or a loved one with ADHD, feel free to reach out to us at coachingwithbrooke.com and all social media platforms at Coaching with Brooke. And remember, it's Brooke with an E. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.